Sightings of unidentified flying objects have become so frequent in recent years that the U.S. government can no longer dismiss them. Days ago, the Pentagon delivered this, their highly anticipated declassified report on UFO activity. Tonight, we will take a deep dive into the report and examine what it reveals about the state of our national and global security, and perhaps life beyond our solar system. This is UFO'S Declassified Live. Welcome to UFO'S Declassified Live. I'm Josh Gates. Normally, I'm traveling to far-flung locations around the world, investigating mysteries on my series Expedition Unknown. This evening, they've let me take a shower and clean up a little bit. I'm here in Las Vegas, along with fellow adventurer, the host of Expedition X, Jessica Chobot.
Hi, thanks for having me. Happy to be here. I am looking forward to declassifying some UFOs.
It's going to be a big night. Together, we will be tackling the mystery of UFOs, this report, the science of these aerial anomalies, and who or what could be behind them. We'll do it by deciphering the fresh-off-the-press Pentagon UFO report and the jaw-dropping footage that prompted it. We have got a rotating panel of experts to analyze everything tonight, and we want to hear from you. Tweet using the hashtag UFO'S Declassified Live, and be sure to follow Discovery on Twitter to participate in our live polls. Starting us off this evening, our panel, we have the award-winning investigative journalist, George Knapp, and investigative filmmaker, the man who kicked off this whole thing with some of the most compelling images of UFOs caught on tape, Jeremy Corbell. Good to see both of you.
Nice to see you, Josh.
Yeah, thanks for being here. All right, this Pentagon report was initially requested by the U.S. Select Committee on Intelligence in December of 2020, but its roots go far deeper than that. Take a look. UFO sightings have been tracked by the United States government since the 1940s. As claims have often been dismissed by government officials, the public has no idea the extent of the activity or what it could mean to national security. However, reports of what has been described as aggressive UFO activity have spiked in recent years, especially over military institutions, putting the United States Department of Defense on edge.
50 knots. Closing in.
These increased public sightings, along with UFO footage leaked by military personnel, has forced the DoD to change their long-standing position.
It is history-changing. It is without a doubt the story of the millennium.
And for the first time, they have authenticated videos of unidentified flying objects. They know that these crafts feature highly advanced technology and are not part of the U.S. military. This caught the attention of the Senate Intelligence Committee. Led by Senator Marco Rubio, they demanded a full report on UFOs for the sake of national security.
Anything that enters an airspace that's not supposed to be there is a threat.
Coming off a flurry of intense interest from the media, the report was delivered to Congress just days ago. Tonight, we identify key findings and unanswered questions. Who do these craft belong to? Adversaries in Russia or China? Is there a possibility they originated beyond our solar system? Or is there a peaceful and earthly explanation? And what does the evidence revealed in the report mean for the United States and the world? All right, well, let's get right into it. George, let's start with you. You have been investigating UFOs from ground zero here in the desert for more than 30 years. First blush reaction, what do you make of this report?
It's massively important. It's such a radical departure from what we've been spoon-fed, the lies and obfuscation we've been spoon-fed by our military and our government for decades. Behind the scenes, since 1947, our military has taken this very seriously while telling the public there's nothing to it, don't worry about it, move on. This report is only 9 pages. It doesn't have a lot of details, but it at least is a new policy direction, and it screams out 2 things to me. One is that UFOs are real and they're physical objects. 2, they're not ours.
All right, Jeremy, you have had your eyes on most of the videos that we're talking about tonight, long before they ever went to Congress. Your thoughts on all of this?
I'm highly encouraged by this report. Mainly, I'm encouraged by the disappointment from the public. People wanted more substance, more information. They don't have any videos in the public report. But what that shows me is that pop culture is grabbing onto this UFO mystery, and they're agreeing, and the military is saying we should study this phenomenon scientifically. That's what the report says. This requires study.
George, I think you probably know better than anyone as an investigative journalist how secretive the government can be on the topic of UFOs. Why the sudden rush to transparency here?
It's a combination of events. This overnight success actually started about 26 years ago here in Las Vegas. Robert Bigelow, businessman, created his own independent UFO think tank. That got the attention of Senator Harry Reid, who a decade later got $22 million to devote to a secret program that studied UFOs and related phenomena. That there was a corollary program that existed in the Pentagon that collected information, including some of the videos that we're going to see tonight. And it came spilling out in the New York Times in December 2017, and it's rolled like a snowball ever since.
I want to talk about technology a little bit here at the top. You know, in this report, there are 143 unidentified instances. A lot of those were made with real high-tech stuff. FLIR is one of them, forward-looking infrared. How does this kind of technology differ from other sensor systems?
Right. So we're living in a different world now where we have corroborative video and thermal evidence. So it's not just a pilot saying, hey, I saw a UFO. It did some amazing maneuvers. Now you have, as you said, forward-looking infrared, which is a thermal camera. You have night vision, which amplifies light. We also have radar and also just corroborative sensor data that is not released to the public that all tell the same tale about UFOs.
Okay, can I play devil's advocate here for a moment? Let me put on my skeptic hat. We've got 143 unidentified objects or instances here in this report. A skeptic might say, well, they're unidentified. You know, despite all this high-tech equipment and the FLIR and the radar, we don't know what these things are. They still look blurry and fuzzy. What do we say to that?
Well, more than half of the cases in that report are confirmed by more than one sensor. So they've got a pretty strong indication that these are physical objects. They appear to be manufactured objects. They have some kind of propulsion system that we do not understand.
And what about the possibility that these objects are, you know, from our own planet? Could these belong to a foreign government, an adversary?
That's also addressed in here, and they have to leave those options open. In the report, they say, could be foreign-made technology, although we have no evidence of that. Could it be secret American technology? Yeah, but there's no evidence of that either.
But that's a big question, right? Could this be technology that comes from us? You know, the U.S. military, the most advanced military in the world, do we have the technology to create objects like this?
We do not. Not that anyone I've ever talked to. I've been pretty far up the food chain, and no one says that this is our technology.
Okay, a lot more on this tonight, obviously. One of the simplest takeaways from the report so far that you're going to be hearing a lot about tonight is the term UAP, which stands for Unidentified Aerial Phenomena. It is the official, somewhat fancier government name for UFOs. But until that catches on, you're going to be hearing both terms tonight. And right now, we are going to hear from our co-host, Jessica Chobot, who has an exclusive live interview. Jessica?
Thanks, Josh. We have got a lot of questions to address tonight, and our first guest is here to help get some answers. Joining us now remotely is Counterterrorism Subcommittee Chairman Andre Carson, who led the classified briefing on UAPs for members of the House Intelligence Committee. Good to see you, Congressman Carson.
What a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for being on the show. So I'll jump right in. Why do you feel that the report was important enough to push through?
Well, I think for me, you know, this is a national security priority. If there is technology out there that we can't explain, that has huge implications for the safety and security of the American people. You know, for many years, I've been urging our intelligence community to take UAPs, commonly known as UFOs, more seriously for this very reason. So I'm very pleased that we're moving in the right direction on that goal.
Awesome. So were you pleased with the results of the report? I mean, you mentioned you were moving towards the goal, but are you pleased with the report itself?
Well, I was pleased that the DNI issued a public report on this issue. Obviously, you know, the content of the report shows that we need to do a lot more research and investigating. Even though this report didn't give us all of the answers, it's very significant because it represents a big shift in the way our intelligence community handles information.
So what part of the report stands out the most to you?
You know, I think the size and scale of the reporting on UAPs is the most significant. Mm-hmm. The DNI report clearly outlines an initial baseline for the sheer number of UAP events. There were 144 reports of UAP events from government sources, and 80 of those reports involved multiple sensors that detected the UAP. So that's a fairly sizable number. It's not a one-off. So once in a, it's not a once in a blue moon phenomenon. Something is going on here, and we don't know how to explain it.
So with that being said, then, what do you personally believe the UAPs are?
Well, I'll say this. I think we have a lot more investigating to do before I can answer that confidently. But I think a lot of us, a lot of folks like me would like to say that we suspect that there's extraterrestrial life. But, the intelligence community says we can't completely rule that out. But it's clear we have to do a lot more digging. All of the stakeholders have to come together and put aside any preconceived notions about UAPs and really engage in a very good faith effort to study the potential security threat, obviously. So we need teams of experts across the national security space and across the intelligence community, as well as civilian reports, really studying this issue, taking input, and I think making very sound conclusions about what this could be, whether it's a threat to our national security. And where I believe I can be the most helpful is by encouraging more research and informing the public as much as we can about these findings.
Well, it's been great talking to you. Thank you so much for your time, sir.
What an honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Josh?
Thanks, Jessica. Well, we have a packed show tonight, including an interview with former White House Chief of Staff John Podesta and stunning, just-released video from the deck of the aircraft carrier USS Omaha. It is just one piece of the incredible footage that we're going to be reviewing tonight as we unravel the identity of these unidentified objects. And during the break, hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag UFO'S Declassified Live. Send in your questions, your comments, your photos. Heck, send in your UFO footage if you've got it. It's a big night, and we are just getting started, so stay tuned. Welcome back to UFO'S Declassified Live. I'm Josh Gates. In addition to being a former White House Chief of Staff, John Podesta has been a longtime believer in the possibility of extraterrestrial life. To discuss the latest revelations in the Pentagon UFO report is John Podesta. Thanks for joining us, sir.
Good to be with you, Josh.
Well, look, I know that you have been calling for the release of this kind of information for a long time, so you must be relieved that this report has come out. Having read it, what's your takeaway?
Well, I welcomed it. It answered a lot of it gave us a lot of information, but it probably opened up more questions than it answered.
Right. And I know you have said for a long time that really all of this information should be declassified. There is a classified version of this report. There's also video we know that the Pentagon has not released. Do you believe still that all of that should come out?
Yes, and I think the American people would welcome that. We know that the United States government has had 144 encounters with unidentified aerial phenomena since 2004. And they can only explain one of them. So let the public look at this data, let it look at the video, let scientists chew on it, and I think we'll learn a lot more about what these UAP phenomena really is all about.
You famously tweeted in 2014 that you felt that one of your greatest failures was not securing the release of this information during the Obama administration. Why do you think it's so important that the public get a look at this?
I think the public really is very intrigued by whether there is life and whether these UAPs are examples of that. And there's just tremendous popular interest. And I think that the government really has an obligation not to hide it, not to pretend that it doesn't exist, not to be embarrassed by it, but just put the information out, let people see it, understand it, debate it.
And considering we have now in this report 143 examples of what seem to be technologically advanced something that have been detected, Does this represent an intelligence failure on some level that we don't know what these objects are?
Well, look, I think for a long time there was just a stigma involved in even discussing this phenomena.
Right.
And so I think people look the other way. And I'm glad now, as a result of efforts, really heroic efforts, particularly by former Democratic Senator Harry Reid, to push this out into the public. The Pentagon's taking it seriously. They've created a UAP task force. The Navy and Air Force both have programs. But again, I'd like to see this more on the civilian side, led by civilian scientists, so that we don't have this cover of classification hiding a lot of information from the American public.
Well, I'm sure there is much more information to come on this front. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it, sir.
Thanks for having me on.
You know, this latest round of UAP sightings generates a lot of questions, none more important than friend or foe. Are these UAPs friendly, or could they be set on doing us harm? And regardless of whether they're an earthly adversary or extraterrestrial, how prepared is our military?
Oh my gosh, dude.
Something is out there and we don't know what it is. People start seeing unidentified flying objects, and they're coming over military bases, and we don't know what to do about it.
I wonder if we are not, in some ways, less prepared for this problem than we were 70 years ago. The facts are that we have unexplained aerial phenomena that are penetrating our airspace. We don't know what they are. We don't understand their capabilities. They seem to defy the laws of physics as we know them.
The United States Navy has admitted that there are objects which they do not know what they are. So whether or not there's enough data in all of these videos is not the key point. The key point is the U.S. Navy admits that they can't identify the objects.
Dude, this is wrong, bro. There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA.
It is definitely displaying a technology, an order of technology, well beyond what we have here.
Look at that thing.
How do we take that? I don't know. I mean, do we see that as a threat? Are we ready? Are the world governments ready? Is the United States ready to defend itself against this threat? We've never seen anything like it. The amount of G-forces they can take. We don't know whether they're piloted or remotely controlled, or they're drones.
What was splashed?
They seem to be especially concentrated where there are nuclear facilities, there are nuclear tests, or there are nuclear propulsion systems in the military.
It's been reported these things accelerate through the sound barrier, but without a sonic boom. This implies almost a new physics. In terms of defining a threat, the military sometimes use the equation capability times intent equals threat. We don't have one of the values. The capability looks really impressive. The intent remains completely unknown.
Well, joining veteran investigative reporter George Knapp and documentarian and UFO expert Jeremy Corbell on the panel are former member of the British Ministry of Defense, Nick Pope, and former CIA officer Jim Semovan. Welcome to you both. Thanks for being here.
Josh. Thanks for having us here.
Absolutely. I'm intimidated and terrified of you both. All right, let's get into some questions here. The report found that there was clustering around military assets. So, Jim, do you see this as intentional targeting of our ships and facilities?
Oh, yes, absolutely. We had an incident in 2019 where there were close to, 50 to 100 UAPs swarming in 9 vessel warships. Were they interested in what? Surveillance, or were they maybe interested in being threatening? We don't know that for sure.
I've also heard reports about this kind of clustering happening around nuclear sites. Is that true?
Absolutely. And we have them around nuclear sites, nuclear missile sites, nuclear testing facilities. And we also have them around our intercontinental ballistic missile sites. And, you look at this and you say, well, what is this about? I mean, all this has been well documented, but they appear to be strongly interested in our nuclear technology. That's for sure.
Sort of terrifying to
hear. It is terrifying, yes.
Nick, you brought up something really interesting in the package we just watched. I want to make sure I get this right. You brought up the equation capability times intent equals threat. So, one of the alarming details in this report is that if the data is accurate, the capabilities of these of these objects seems kind of off the charts. Can we really know their intent?
No, we can't. If this was Russia or China, intelligence officers would have a fair idea. But if it's something unknown, possibly extraterrestrial, we have no idea. Therefore, we can't define the threat. And if you can't define or evaluate it, hope for the best, prepare for the worst.
So, okay, well, let's say that they do have these tremendous capabilities and that we don't know what they are. I mean, if that's the case, shouldn't President Biden be hiding in a bunker somewhere, Jim? I mean, I'm getting nervous here.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, in 1947, the Air Force came out and they said, we don't deem UAPs a threat. And there's no evidence that we have right now that they're an existential threat to this country or to anybody else. So at the moment, they seem to pose more of a hazard to aviation than they do a threat to the military or to the country.
Let's talk about technology here. Jim, do you see these UAPs as being more advanced than our top-of-the-line stealth arsenal?
Oh, I think absolutely. Absolutely. Stealth technology is all about low visibility. It's like not being seen. Well, these things are UAPs on steroids. I mean, these are, stealth fighter aircraft on steroids. They seem to appear and disappear instantaneously. So you have to ask yourself, I mean, are they using a cloaking device? What are they doing to get this?
I've even read, Nick, that some people have theorized that our own stealth technology is somehow based off of these UAPs. That feels a little far-fetched to me. What do you make of that?
Well, I don't know if we got stealth technology from UFOs, but UFOs seem to be using it. And one of the really interesting things in the report to Congress is the phrase signature management. These objects are taking active measures to suppress their radar signature, making it more difficult for us to track them. There's an intelligence at play here.
All of this is so fascinating. I was just informed that we are trending on Twitter, which I think speaks to the fascination that people have with this topic. I want to check in with my co-host, Jessica Chobot. She is an investigator in her own right. Tonight, she is digging in with a very special guest to get some answers. Jess?
Thank you, Josh. With me right now is former F-16 fighter pilot Tracy LaTourette to give us her insight on a pilot's eye view of these phenomena. So, Tracy, a common theme when discussing these UAPs has been that they are more advanced than our military's finest. Our U.S. stealth aircraft is highly regarded, though, and our foreign adversaries also have stealth technology as well. So, can you please give us the rundown on these different types of craft?
You bet, Jess. So the term stealth refers to an aircraft's ability to avoid detection by radar. We typically hear stealth and think of, well, most often the B-2 Spirit or the F-117 Nighthawk. This is the bomber, this is our fighter. The great thing is we've been able to take lessons we've learned from the employment of these two aircraft and design the latest 5th generation stealth technology, which is at the end down there, the F-22 Raptor, and not shown, our F-35 Lightning II. So that's our latest and greatest. But we're not alone. We're not the only countries that have these. The Chinese have the Chengdu J-20, the Russians have the Su-57. So it's important that we continue to stay ahead of the competition. We're always looking for emerging threats.
Interesting. So what puts the stealth heads and shoulders above the rest?
Well, I think that's really one of the best things about our nation is not only do we have these great aircraft that have proven time and again that they're incredibly effective, but we never give up. We never rest. We're always pushing the envelope. In fact, this technology, the F-22 and 35 technology is 20 years old.
Yeah.
So I would love to know what's classified, what's behind the curtain. Something's happening.
Oh, for sure. Well, can any of these aircraft actually move like the UAPs we've been capturing and seeing?
I haven't seen any of them move exactly like that, but we do have some that have some thrust vectoring that does allow them to do some interesting maneuvers. But it's still very different than what we're seeing tonight.
Interesting. All right. Well, thank you for your insight, Tracy. Josh, back to you.
Thank you, Jessica and Tracy. Next up, we have got one of the most incredible videos responsible for the compilation of the Pentagon report. It is called the Tic Tac video, and you will not believe how this thing moves. Plus, we've got that amazing newly released footage from the deck of the USS Omaha when our broadcast continues. And tweet us using the hashtag UFO'S Declassified Live on Twitter and share your close encounter stories. We'll be right back. Welcome back to UFO's Declassified Live. Well, based on our poll, it looks like 66.7% of you do not believe there is any evidence of hostility with recent UFO sightings. Peace-loving aliens. The other 33% of you, Mars attacks. Welcome back to the show. I am really excited that you're all here. We're having an amazing time going through the recently submitted to the public Pentagon UFO report. Joining us now, we have a very special guest here. Joining our panel, we have got our resident F-16 fighter pilot, Tracy Latorette. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So as we just saw, the report that was just delivered to Congress leans heavily on the accounts of military aviators. Of course, that makes sense. They are equipped with the best surveillance technology around, and footage captured using this high-end gear is difficult to dispute. Get ready for this. The following was captured using FLIR, forward-looking infrared, in 2004 on the USS Nimitz in San Diego. Check it out. All right, Jeremy, walk us through what we are looking at here.
Right, so this is FLIR footage, which is a thermal footage. It was Commander Chad Underwood who was tasked out towards the Tic Tac object. Remember, there were a lot of Tic Tacs dropping in from 80,000 feet down to sea level in less than a second and a half. Incredible speeds, but they caught one of them, and this is footage of that, and you'll see it towards the end of the footage, it does shoot off to the left, and the tracking pod, it's outside of the tolerance of it, so it can't hold it at the end. Incredible speeds are demonstrated at the end of this video.
Absolutely remarkable stuff. So I have to take this over to Tracy at this point. You're the only one here at this table who really knows what it's like to fly around in a fighter jet. Let's say you see one of these things. What do you do? What's your response?
Well, what you do, it depends, right? That's always the answer. But the first thing is always going to be inserting just a split-second pause that allows me that critical moment to become aware of the critical details in the surroundings, assess the situation, and then act in accordance with my objective. So in this case, that means that I want to identify whether or not this is a friendly target or if it's something else. And whether or not I'm able to identify that, the next thing is going to be, do I see any kind of hostile intent? And luckily, I don't see any here, so.
All right, well, that's good. As a pilot, have you ever seen anything like this?
I have never seen anything like this, so it's pretty exciting.
Okay, wow. All right, George, I want to turn to you for a moment here. I've heard people refer to a kind of checklist of authenticity when it comes to UFOs. The four main criteria being footage, eyewitnesses, radar, and propulsion. For you, how many boxes does this footage check?
All of them. I mean, we've seen the footage. The whole world has seen that footage and is impressed by it. The witnesses are the most trustworthy people. They're naval aviators, best fighter pilots in the world, all credible people with top security clearances. The propulsion system is the question mark. All we know is that it's not ours.
Jim, any chance that what we're seeing in this video is a top secret U.S. military project?
No, it's highly unlikely. It would be absolute folly for one branch of the military to introduce a new technology into a active military exercise, in this particular case, a Navy exercise. It would be too much chance for error and mistakes to be made. And the Navy hierarchy, in this case, would never have permitted it.
Tracy, just to give me some sense of this, how advanced would this object have to be up there competing with our own, stealth aircraft and jet fighters? I mean, compare the two for me.
Well, I think to be able to move as abruptly and as fast as this object does, it has to be significantly more advanced than our fifth-generation technology. But as I mentioned before, that's been around for 20 years. So I have a hard time believing that there's not a whole lot of advancement going on at those highest classified levels. And remember, none of us are allowed to know everything. So.
But does that mean that you think this could be something that's U.S. military or no?
I think that the level of classification that we have protects us. And so I think that it's possible.
It is possible. George, one of the things that really jumps out at me about the Tic Tac video is that it comes from 2004. Why do you think it took 17 years to catch the public's attention like this?
Well, it actually came out. It was leaked. Somebody shot it off a screen, and it got put up on an obscure website, then quickly taken down. In a couple of years later, there was a behind-the-scenes study that was done that interviewed all the pilots, collected all that information. It wasn't until Jeremy and I started talking about it in early 2017 that the public was starting to catch on. And then the New York Times got the video, and it exploded. They put it on the front page. I think that is why that story went all over the world.
Amazing stuff. All right. Coming up, an exclusive interview with the airmen who captured the footage of the Tic Tac. And later, we will be sharing riveting footage of a recent UAP sighting you do not want to miss. And we'll be speaking to the man who released it, the guy sitting next to me, Jeremy Corbell, as our experts continue to examine the evidence and arrive at their verdict. Adversary, alien, or something else? And let us know what you think. We're trending on Twitter, so please continue to hit us up using the hashtag UFOs Declassified Live. Send us your UAP pics and footage. Be right back. Welcome back to the show. Our live poll shows that folks are pretty divided on what the Tic Tac video actually shows. We've got a real split opinion on this front. Welcome back to UFO's Declassified Live. I'm Josh Gates, and joining me on my esteemed panel of experts are UFO aficionados Jeremy Corbell, George Knapp, and Jim Semovan. Okay, so before the break, we saw this Tic Tac video. It is a remarkable and compelling piece of evidence suggesting to some that there could be extraterrestrial life. The footage was captured back in 2004 by former Navy Airman Commander Chad Underwood, who actually coined the term Tic Tac UFO. He has never spoken publicly about this incident until now. Now, Jeremy, I understand that when Chad spotted this, whatever this was, the systems on his aircraft actually jammed?
Yeah, his optics and weapon systems were actively jammed.
Okay, this is amazing stuff. Let's take a look.
Declassified videos, authentic Department of Defense footage.
Splash.
You should have been able to target it. You weren't. That is an indication of active jamming. Is that correct?
Yes.
Wow.
Once I got the target of interest on my radar, I took a lock, and that's when all the kind of the funky things started happening. The erratic nature of the Tic Tac, the airspeed was very telling to me. Then we started seeing what we call jam strobe lines. Strobe lines are vertical lines that show up on your radar that are indications that you're being jammed.
Interview. I got to ask first off, how did you get Chad to speak out about this? He's been really reluctant to do that.
Right. So Commander David Fravor is the man who chased a UFO for the United States military. This same UFO is the one that Commander Underwood was able to film. And he hasn't talked. I like to believe I have a charming personality. American can decide for themselves. But also just, we became friends. We became friends over time talking about this. I'm just curious. I wanted to know. Look, his aircraft was actively jammed. What that means is the UFO was sending a signal to actively jam, which are tied into his weapons systems. That is an act of war under normal circumstances, even though this is highly abnormal.
George, this is your first time seeing this video. What do you think? Game changer?
Chad Underwood oozes credibility. Like David Fravor, like Alex Dietrich, like Ryan Graves, these naval aviators are the best pilots in the world. We trust them. We trust them to fly these multi-million-dollar planes. We trust their judgment. We give them top secret security clearances. So when they tell us that something is amiss up there, that this is a genuine UFO and have never seen anything like it, I believe them.
Jim, as our clandestine expert here, are you surprised that Chad came forward?
Yes, actually I am, given the taboo associated with reporting UAPs. He's very brave to do this, very courageous to do this.
Right, because a lot of pilots, they see something like this, the last thing they're going to do is talk about it, right?
Exactly.
I mean, that can actually be sort of damaging, I would assume, to their career.
It could be a career killer. You know, even in this UAP report that was released last week, it notes that there is still a stigma attached to this, even though the Navy 2 years ago changed its policies and tried to encourage pilots to go ahead and, if you see something, say something. A lot of them won't do it.
All right, well, lots to think about here. Let's go now to Jessica and Tracy for a closer look at the Tic Tac video.
Thanks, Josh. Tracy, as a former fighter pilot, what makes the Tic Tac video so compelling?
Well, I think the Tic Tac video is so interesting because clearly it's not like anything that most pilots out there have ever seen before. And when you look at it, it's in one spot and then kind of pulls away, but you can see that he's working really hard to maintain the lock. And that suggests that, just as we heard, there may have been some active radar jamming. And that is definitely something that's going to get my attention.
Yeah, for sure. Well, at the end of the Tic Tac video, like you said, the craft actually zooms off here kind of to the left. Is it possible that the pilot actually banked to the right inadvertently and kind of created his own illusion?
That's a great question. Actually, if you look in the center above your blue line there, you can see what looks like the little aircraft higher above it, up there. Yeah. So that, we call that the flight path marker. It's straight in line with what we call the horizon line on either side, and that's not in a bank. So what we're seeing here is that the aircraft is actually, fairly straight and level, and that suggests to me that that object is actually doing exactly what we think, that's zooming off on its own.
I mean, that was a great explanation. Obviously, I don't know how to read radar. So is there anything else on the screen that we should be paying attention to? What does it mean?
Well, I think an interesting thing here, we're looking at infrared technology, and down in the lower left there, you can see it says WHT. It's really blurry and hard to see, but that means that we are operating at this moment in a white hot. So if the object is white, that means it's hot. And that's typically what we expect to see from an aircraft because the engine shows hot, so it would show white.
Very interesting. Thanks again, Tracy. Josh, back to you.
Thanks, Jessica and Tracy. Coming up, we have got more incredible information to share from the Pentagon report and some breathtaking video that checks all the big boxes. It is not to be missed. And stick around as our experts are drawing ever closer to their conclusion: adversary, alien, or neither. And don't forget to share your thoughts, your photos, and your footage with us on Twitter using the hashtag UFO'S Declassified Live. Welcome back to UFO'S Declassified Live. Well, just 5 days ago, the intelligence community and the public at large received a long-awaited government confirmation of UFO activity. I am joined by our panel live in Las Vegas to discuss the headline-making Pentagon report. Okay, let's go back in time here a little bit, Jeremy, to Roswell, the granddaddy of all American UFO stories here, 1947. But we've got, what, a 57-year gap between that and the accounts that we see in this Pentagon report. So why this gap? I assume there must have been UFO sightings in that intervening time?
Yeah, that's interesting. So the report is going just from the Tic Tac UFO case and then forward, because a lot of the sensor data that they have and they want to work with, the military data, is in those years. But UFOs have been consistent all the way through.
Why do you think that Roswell continues to capture our imagination?
Because it did in the first place, because the United States military admitted they had a crashed flying saucer. They turned that around the next day, but it was a moment where they admitted it.
George, can we talk a little bit about Area 51? You were such a key player in breaking that story wide open. What is the connection between Area 51 and Roswell?
The story of Roswell has been muddied over the years, and I think on purpose. The first story came from the U.S. military. They said a flying saucer crashed out there. Then they changed it to it was a weather balloon. Then they changed it again to a super-duper double-secret probation weather balloon. And it's hard to get a real good handle on what was out there. But if you had a crashed flying saucer, if you're trying to take it apart, reverse engineer it to figure out how it works, where would you take it? I'd say the top of the list would be Area 51, because it has been the location of choice for testing all kinds of top secret platforms. The U-2, the Blackbird programs, the stealth fighter were all developed out there. I've interviewed 24 witnesses or more who over the years have worked out there and have said they've seen something that sure looks like a flying saucer that we were taking apart to figure out how it worked, not building it.
Incredible stuff. All right, I want to pour over some of the language in this report with you, Jim. It says, and I'm quoting, some UAP may be technologies deployed by China, Russia, another nation, a non-governmental entity, perhaps. So what does a non-governmental entity constitute?
Well, you know, I was not really sure what they meant by that, but there's a possibility they meant either a terrorist organization or perhaps a rogue private corporation. But in my opinion, I think it's highly unlikely that China, Russia, or a non-governmental entity is behind UAPs.
I mean, could this be just the case of an individual, Nick? I guess I turn to you. How do we know that these UAPs aren't, you know, some kid with a drone out there? Because I'm sure that's what a lot of skeptics would put forward, right? With all the drones we have out there, and we've seen problems with drones at airports and other places, could that be what people are seeing?
Well, I think drones might explain some sightings, but not all. The report says there are multiple explanations for UFOs. But look, we know what drones look like. We know what kind of heat signatures that some of them give off, what radar returns. And I mean, this is not drones. There's something else at play here.
Right. Drones are not giving fighter jets a run for their money, typically.
Absolutely. I mean, this is, again, it's the capability here. It's running rings around our best cutting-edge technology.
Okay, so if whatever these are extraterrestrial, if there are aliens out there, and they are, as they would have to be here, a technologically advanced species, then chances are they come from what is commonly known as a Goldilocks planet, where conditions for life are just right. With more, here's Jessica and renowned astrophysicist and author of Quantum Life, Dr. Hakeem Oluseyi.
Thank you, Josh. Dr. O, we know that our universe is vast and there are more planets beyond our solar system. So let's talk a little bit about life on those planets.
To say our universe is vast is an understatement. This representation right here shows galaxies.
Yep.
So we think of galaxies as being the basic building block of the universe, and there's like 2 trillion galaxies in the observable universe. Now, each galaxy will have on average about 100 billion stars. So that's 100 billion trillion stars that we're talking about. And what we learned from the Kepler satellite is that stars, when they form, planet formation is a side effect of star formation. So just about every star has planets. So we're talking multiples of 100 billion trillion when we're talking about planets. So that's a lot of opportunity for life in the universe and for technological life to come about in the universe.
That's amazing. Tons of opportunities there. So I know there are different types of Goldilocks planets. So let's talk about the ice-covered ones.
Yes.
What
So
makes those special?
when we look for life out away from Earth, we have a phrase, and that phrase is follow the water. And so what we see for ice-covered worlds like we have right here, we have these in our own solar system. Enceladus and Europa are moons that have ice on the surface, and the ice is miles thick, but underneath there's a liquid water ocean. And what we now know about life, based on the work of biologists and astrobiologists of the last 20 years, is that life starts in the absence of light and oxygen. So life could get started on a place just like this.
That's okay. And so then what about Earth-like exoplanets?
Yeah, now we're getting to planets that are more like ourselves, right? So we're talking about rocky worlds, and these rocky worlds have a surface. And on Earth's surface, that's where we have a lot of water. Now, it turns out that one of the most common types of Earth-like planet is what we call a super-Earth. They're more massive, they're bigger, and gravity is stronger. So if there is a life form that comes into existence there, it's going to be a lot stronger and a lot shorter. So think dwarf Incredible Hulks.
That's amazing. All right, so tell us then about what are habitable zones?
Right. So the habitable zone is kind of an old idea because we thought about the habitable zone as where life may form and where life may be found. But like I said, we now know that life is not formed. And what this has to do with is how far away the planet is from its star so that it can have liquid water on its surface. Now, what this doesn't tell you is what's the light conditions on the surface of the star. So here on Earth, something really special happened. Whereas most planets, where you're going to find liquids, they're going to be under thick atmospheres or miles of ice or miles of rock. On Earth, we have a transparent atmosphere. So we have an ocean with early life in it. You mix it up and shine light energy on it for 4 billion years. And what do you get? Eventually, that life learns to use that light to create oxygen, which is deadly to early life, but it allows and sets the stage for life like ourselves. So a habitable zone is where you can have an explosion of life that can lead to intelligent and technologically advanced life.
Awesome. So someone flipped the lights on and then it's go time.
That's right. After a few billion years.
Yeah, give or take. Yeah. Thanks for your time, Dr. O. Josh, back to you.
Thanks, Jessica and Dr. O. Now turning from science to science fiction. One of the longest running and popular TV shows in sci-fi history was The X-Files. The show's creator, Chris Carter, spoke candidly about the Pentagon report and the possibility of life beyond planet Earth.
People ask me what I believe in the UFO phenomenon, the alien abduction phenomenon. And I'm kind of a hybrid of Mulder and Scully. Like Mulder, I want to believe, like that poster on his wall. And like Scully, I want to see the science. I'm skeptical by nature. For me, the videos are exciting that on modern equipment and with modern technology, we are capturing something that is out there and it's behaving in a strange and mysterious manner. This is a really exciting time. We may or may not learn what these things are, but I think it's recent studies and the recent sightings that push things forward. I think our reactions to the UFO videos are healthy. The pilots, for me, seem unimpeachable. What they gathered from their avionics or radar seems beyond doubt that they saw those things and that their reactions to them are real. So the X-Files and the subject matter and UFOs are being given some credence that they might have had before. You know, I believe that we don't have answers. I believe that we're searching for answers. I believe that there are the possibility of alien life out there, like Carl Sagan, who actually said, you know, there's more chance than not. And now we've discovered since the 90s that there are these exoplanets revolving around their own suns. The chance is even greater now that there is life on these planets.
Chris Carter, the truth is out there. We've asked for your tweets, photos, and footage. Let's see who answered the call. All right, Artemis here says, do you think we'll meet actual aliens in our lifetime? Nick, what are your thoughts on that?
I hope so. I think ours will be the generation that makes that discovery, whether it's through science or UFOs, or both.
Fantastic. Asked and answered. Don't be shy about sending us your questions using the hashtag UFOs Declassified Live. Josh, take it away.
Well, coming up, we will be screening the astonishing UAP footage that got the entire Pentagon report rolling. Plus, our experts will debate the origins of these UAPs when UFOs Declassified Live returns. Welcome back to UFOs Declassified Live. I'm Josh Gates. Personally, I have been blown away by what we've seen so far, and man, we are just warming up. There is so much more. Earlier this year, the Pentagon confirmed that one of the most intriguing UFO videos on record, footage of a mysterious triangular airborne craft sourced by our own Jeremy Corbell here back in 2019, is indeed authentic. Check this out. This is the pyramid-shaped UFO. All right, walk me through this, Jeremy. What are we looking at?
Sure. So George and I obtained and released, this is night vision through a night vision binocular on board of the USS Russell. There are pyramid-shaped UFOs. Numerous of them, 3 of them were above the tail, about 700 feet. They'd slow and go with the ship.
Oh, look at that. It's not just one object. There's multiple objects there.
Right. One is blinking, and there's been a lot of thought about that. You know, is this just the UFO blinking, or is this reflection from a surface, and the blinking is something from the ship? We don't know, but these are pyramid-shaped UFOs swarming a Navy warship, the USS Russell.
Absolutely incredible footage, and just sort of, you know, mind-bending, because you look at it and you just think, what am I looking at here?
Confirmed by the Pentagon, not only to be actual footage, you know, filmed by our military, but also to be included as an unknown, unidentified. These are UFOs, and they're admitting it.
Okay, so this footage gets even crazier, because as amazing as this is, this footage was taken by the USS Russell off the coast of San Diego at the exact same time. Nearby, the USS Omaha detected its own swarm of unidentified objects. Take a look at their radar and give a listen to the reaction of the military personnel. This is amazing.
OD, if you can write a general lat long where we're at.
And then the number of contacts you got, get the course and speed leaders off them. You know what I mean? In relative position to us, the bearings might be helpful too. Eyes up. Eyes down.
System 2, maintain track as best you can.
Track 781 just sped up to 46 knots, 50 knots, closing in. Oh, 138 knots. Oh,
that one's pretty much perfectly 000 relative, right?
Yeah.
263 at 3 miles, 55 knots speed.
All right, this just makes my head hurt because, I have to say I am a skeptically minded person, but I look at the pyramid footage and I think, okay, that's intriguing. Then I look at the radar from the Omaha nearby. Now I really don't know what to think, and it gets even crazier. I'm going to show you now FLIR footage taken from the Omaha. It's a different view of one of the UAP involved in the radar swarm. Give a listen to this. It is really exciting.
Break Omaha, pick me kid, Rafael Peralta, passive ability to launch helo ASAP.
Splash to get bearing range.
You got 2 winds, 30 knots.
Keep going, bro. Don't sweat on us.
We're making 10, so we can probably bring down 35 relative. Sir.
Yeah, I bring it down.
We got a lot of white water out there, so 6 foot swells.
Whoa, it's getting close.
Yeah, we have 31 knots sustained wind, topside, gust of 40.
Whoa, splashed. Mark bearing and range.
So it goes in the water.
Yeah, it's suspected that it goes into the water like a transmedium vehicle. They're not exactly sure, but they did send out a submarine to go look for it.
So walk me through this term, because I've heard this before, a transmedium vehicle. This means it can be in the air and underwater.
Right, so something that can penetrate the space between air and sea without disturbance, without destruction.
It's just remarkable to see it do that. Nick, is it possible that what appears to be an object going into the water here is some sort of, I don't know, stealth technology, optical illusion?
Well, I wonder if it isn't like the old magician's trick of doing something with one hand, but the real action is going on in the other. And I mean, this is extraordinary, but in 2018, the Defense Intelligence Agency wrote to Congress about a number of studies being undertaken under the Pentagon's ATIP program. And in there were all these advanced theoretical physics concepts such as warp drive, wormholes, and invisibility.
And we mentioned this submarine. They did send a submarine down to look for this thing?
Yeah, because understand, this was a swarm. There were multiple UFOs across many ships. And so when they see this one that appears to go into the water, they wanted to find the wreckage of the craft.
I have to say, as compelling as the report is, this sequence of this FLIR footage, the radar footage, the night vision, it's just so interesting. Yeah. Okay, and also unidentified objects, they are not just something that are appearing in the United States. Up next, we're going to investigate UAP sightings from around the globe. Plus, we have got some phenomenal new footage from the deck of the Omaha, which checks all the boxes. And maybe the final piece of evidence our experts need to nail down whether these UAPs are adversary, extraterrestrial, or something else entirely. And later, we'll be joined by none other than the head of NASA. Welcome back to UFO's Declassified Live. I'm your host, Josh Gates. The footage of pyramid-shaped UFOs may be relatively new to many of us, but actually pyramid UFO videos have been around for quite a while. In fact, our own George Knapp smuggled some pyramid UFO footage out of Russia several years ago. Let's go to Jessica and the man himself to talk about it. Jess?
Thanks, Josh. George, let's take a look at your pyramid video and you can tell me about it.
Okay.
So what have we got here?
This is a huge pyramid-shaped object, not triangle, but pyramid, that was shot in the skies over Latvia in 1968. It ended up in the Ministry of Defense. Russia's Ministry of Defense had giant files on UFOs that I tried to access in the early 90s. You might recall during the early 90s, glasnost, perestroika, that country was undergoing a lot of changes. And I thought, well, maybe there's a window of opportunity to find out what the Russians know about UFOs and also what the Americans know about UFOs from the Russians. And we went over there with the help of a Russian physicist who had government contacts. He put us in touch with Ministry of Defense officials, intelligence officials, and they told us about the biggest UFO study in history. It was a 10-year-long study. The whole Russian military was part of it. They collected tens of thousands of reports, including videos, and I was able to get some of that material, classified as it was, and bring it back.
Very interesting. I just wanted to zoom in on this a little bit so we can get a better view. Oh, let me do that again. No, my Zoom's not working. Anyway, so how did you manage to smuggle this out of Russia?
I think I'm going to be vague about that because someday I might want to go back to Russia.
Nice.
But it was, it was a very tense moment. I'll just put it that way. But they considered this to be a genuine UFO because of some of the characteristics about how it flew, even though we don't see it in this film clip. But it was part of a gigantic cache of information that the Ministry of Defense collected over a 10-year period.
And so how long ago was this particular footage
That's
taken?
1968, Latvia, which was sort of part of the USSR back then. The USSR crumbled, of course, and the Russians took over, but that was in their files.
So obviously there's been video documentation of pyramid-shaped UFOs for over 50 years. Why do you think people are only really talking and paying attention about it now?
It's kind of a combination of events. You know, there's always something more important in your life, the economy, your family, whatever, politics. And now we've had such an avalanche of UFO coverage by mainstream media that it's caught the attention of the public in a way that I never thought I would see in my life.
That's great. All right, well, right now we're going to do a side-by-side comparison of your footage and the footage from 2019. So let's pull that up. So what I think is really interesting about this is over here from Latvia, you kind of have a beveled edge. It's all by itself, and it's kind of staying perfectly still. Where over here, you've got multiple shaped UFO, or multiple triangle-shaped UFOs, as well as the fact that it's pulsing.
Yeah, this guy, the pyramid over here brought his little buddies along with him. And if you notice, if you watch the footage close enough, they're not traveling all at once. It's not a reflection. Those two different objects pace at a different pace than the main object that we see that's flashing. This guy came by himself.
So, I mean, would you say just off the top of your head, would they potentially be related and this is just a more advanced version of whatever this was?
Yeah, that's a good thought. I mean, it was 30 years in between, so it's possible, 40 years in between, so it's possible that the same kind of technology is reflected in both of those film clips.
Interesting. All right, well, I'd say yours really holds up. Thank you very much, George. Back to you, Josh.
Absolutely incredible stuff. And for the kids watching at home, don't smuggle UFO videos out of Russia. It's a bold move, George. Look, the fact that he was able to smuggle this footage out proves this next point. These UAPs, they are a worldwide concern. So far, we have focused on sightings off the Florida and California coasts here in the United States. But the phenomena extends all around the globe. Let's take a look.
UFOs are a global phenomenon. And while the current spotlight is on the United States, there is more to this than just those 3 U.S. Navy videos.
My gosh. Uno. Y ahí van los atrás. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 en la pantalla.
I think when it comes to UFOs, this is a global issue, a humanity issue. What I've seen with other countries is pretty interesting. Every country, for the most part, has their own UFO programs. They're much more open with their population on these things than we are. Well, they're really kind of waiting for us to take the lead.
I think it would be safe to say that most world governments have encountered this UAP phenomenon, without a doubt. It appears everywhere, but we can't predict when they're going to appear, why they're going to appear, and where they're going to appear. But we do know that there are some governments, particularly in Brazil, Argentina, Chile, Peru, France, the UK, Australia, all of these countries have information on these sightings.
It seems very simple to say, why don't all the countries of the world cooperate, be friends? And until there is a global acknowledgement of the threat, it seems unlikely that there will be significant cooperation.
Incredibly enlightening stuff. I think it begs the question also, if these UAPs are being spotted around the world, does that bolster the theory that perhaps they're extraterrestrial? Joining us again is Nick Pope. Nick, let me ask you this. These global sightings, are they largely similar?
There are similarities, yes, in shape, in sudden accelerations, in the ability to go through the sound barrier with no sonic boom. I mean, this is a global phenomenon. Everything I know from my government work tells me there are sightings around the world, programs usually embedded in DODs and air forces. And if anyone says, as skeptics occasionally do, oh, why aren't there any sightings in this country or that country? It's usually because the politics, the language, the culture, the sightings are there. We're just not hearing about them.
You know, one of the most mind-boggling international sightings that I've ever seen is this sighting from Puerto Rico. Take a look at this. We have this incident where we have this object being tracked and it is flying along. Jeremy, tell us a little bit about what's going to happen here.
Well, what you see is like a transmedium vehicle. It's a vehicle that goes from the air through the water without decelerating at all. It also at one point splits in two. And this was filmed by the Homeland Security, was the original place that it was filmed from. So it's a pretty astounding piece of FLIR footage.
This moment where it actually appears to break in two, though, right here, this is really astounding. The object literally, it's like a magic trick. We have this one object that suddenly becomes two different objects just in the blink of an eye.
And it was highly studied, and the fact that it moves through the water without deceleration, that again shows that transmedium characteristic that UFOs are known for.
Because most objects that are traveling at a high speed, that are aerial, they hit the water, it's over, right? They slow down, they stop, there's a huge amount of drag and friction. This thing just keeps going.
That's right, and that's due most likely to the propulsion system itself.
Any evidence that this footage could be doctored?
This footage, no.
Do you see any evidence of that, George?
No, the SCU, a really reputable organization, did an analysis of this over several months. They studied every frame of it. They believe it to be legitimate, and they don't have an explanation for how one object splits into two, and they're both still flying under some controlled circumstances.
You know, one of the things here in the United States historically has been that our government has been pretty tight-lipped about UFO activity. I'm curious, as we talk about these global sightings, how is this handled in other countries around the world?
Most of them seem to follow the United States model. Our allies certainly follow that. I think the UK takes its cues from the US, that they say one thing behind the scenes and they say something else to the public. That certainly was true for Russia. They told their people for decades that this was a capitalist plot. Pay no attention to these UFOs behind the scenes. They were studying it for very practical reasons, trying to figure out how to make their own.
One of the things I saw, I went to Chile a few years ago, and they had a program there that was actually quite open to the public. They were encouraging people to come forward, encouraging pilots to come forward. I think whether you're a believer or a skeptic, just for the sake of national security or the sake of anybody who gets in an airplane, surely there's got to be real value to encouraging people to report these things.
Here's the thing. We're in a race for this technology. The United States wants it, UK wants it, Russia wants it, China wants it. And the first nation to figure this stuff out wins.
All right, well, thank you, everybody. Very informative. Coming up, our panel of experts will be breaking down more key videos as we debate whether these UAPs are adversaries, extraterrestrials, or something else entirely. And later in the show, we are going to learn about arguably the most groundbreaking cosmic discovery of the century. Plus, we'll hear more from the producer and creator of The X-Files. Use the hashtag UFO'S Declassified Live on Twitter and submit your questions for our panelists now. Welcome back to UFO's Declassified Live. Looking at our Twitter poll, a whopping 89.4% of you believe that there is life outside our solar system. We're winning over hearts and minds here tonight. Welcome back to the show. I'm Josh Gates. We are getting closer to the final verdict on the Pentagon's groundbreaking report. Now, this next piece of footage checks a lot of boxes. In 2015, on the USS Theodore Roosevelt, the United States Navy captured what's come to be known as the Go Fast video off the coast of Florida. Check this out.
Nickel 6-1 Tango Project, over. Oh, got it! Roger, there's troubleshooting as soon as did you box moving target? 602. No, I took an auto track. Oh, okay. Oh my gosh, dude. Wow, look at it fly.
All right, well, joining us on the panel now is former director of the CIA Office of Technical Service. Please welcome Bob Wallace. How are you, sir?
It's an honor to be here, Josh.
Well, it's an honor to have you here. Let's start with this. What is the likelihood that a foreign adversary would be developing technology like this without the U.S. knowing it?
Josh, if we were doing our job, we would know it, right? That's the whole purpose of intelligence. Find out what the adversary is doing, find it out soon, and get it to people who can make the decision. Now, with respect to the UAPs specifically, if I could use this illustration, this piece of paper represents all possible information about UAPs.
Okay.
This dot represents what we know. So I caution us against being too arrogant.
Wow, amazing. We really blew our budget on that visual aid there, too. But I take your point. We don't know much at this point. There's a lot we don't know. Okay, we've got eyewitness testimony. We've got video. We've got radar. We've got movement. We've got propulsion in this last video. I mean, this one seems to check all the boxes. I turn now to Tracy, our resident fighter pilot here. What do you make of the Go Fast video? What jumps out to you?
Oh, I think this video is incredible. As fighter pilots, we like to think that we're fast, but this object looks like it is going super fast.
So that's what I want to talk about here. Compare it for me to a fighter jet. You know, how difficult is it to even track an object like this?
Well, you can see it looks like they're working pretty hard to get a lock. And at first glance, we might think that it's many objects going across that particular screen. But when I look closer, it looks like they're trying to grab it, and then it breaks lock, and then the radar slews back, and they try again, breaks lock, it slews back. And then eventually it's able to bind around the object, and you can hear the Wizzo saying that he went to an auto track mode to auto slew onto it.
Right. And I love asking you this question. Have you ever seen anything like this?
I have never seen anything like this.
I love hearing that, because you are the one up there that should be able to identify this stuff. And it's so mind-bending when we hear that we don't know what this is. George, how important was this video to the compiling of the Pentagon report?
Well, it's another brick in the wall. You'll recall the Tic Tac was the first one that was officially released and the New York Times reported on. Then Gimbal, then Go Fast, and taken all together, it certainly paints a picture that someone out there has got some technology far beyond what we've got.
All right, I want to understand this video a little bit more. So let's check in with Jessica and Dr. O to bring us up to speed on propulsion and movement. Jess?
Thanks, Josh. Dr. O, we're throwing around a lot of words that aren't everyday terms. So let's start with G-force. For example, traditional known vehicles versus the UAPs that we've been seeing a la the Tic Tac. What is G-force exactly?
So when a body, if you're in a vehicle and it changes direction, if it speeds up or slows down, you will feel what is like a force. And that is due to a change in your state of motion, and we call that an acceleration. So if we look at a race car, it has a top speed of 246 miles per hour. But if the car is going at a constant speed, it's not accelerating. So it doesn't matter how fast you're going, you don't feel any forces. But if it accelerates, and this car can accelerate up to 6 Gs, you feel a force. So a G is a gravity equivalent. So a person in this vehicle will feel 6 times their own weight pressing on them. If you're in an F-117, its top speed is 684 miles per hour, but its top acceleration is 9 Gs. That means the pilot will feel 9 times their own body weight. And you can only survive that for a short amount of time.
Really? So 0 to 9, that's what's going to hit you. That's what you're going to feel.
When you're in a car and it goes really fast, you get pushed back in your seat, that's a G-force. That's an acceleration creating a force on your body. Now, when we talk about an F-16, look at that top speed, 1,500 miles per hour, much faster than the F-17, but the same maximum acceleration. Right? So inside your body is designed to be upright in gravity. So that determines where blood goes. And so if you accelerate too fast, it's going to go where it's not supposed to.
Well, so then how many Gs can the human body withstand before it can't withstand it anymore?
It depends. It's a matter of the G-force and the amount of time you experience that G-force. So, and it also depends on your training. So a fighter pilot, for example, may hit 9 Gs over the course of their career over and over and over again. But, you know, for regular people like you and me who are untrained, well, I could survive it, but the average person couldn't.
Well, I almost passed out on the mummy ride. You know, it's fine. I wouldn't make it. That was definitely that too. So how does this all compare with the Tic Tac?
Now, what we have, if we take these videos at face value and say this is a vehicle that's changing speed this rapidly, that gives us data. Because look at those G-forces.
Yeah.
5,000. No living creature that we know that's macroscopic like ourselves could survive that. So that would say that if we take it at face value, is there a being inside there? And if there is, what is the trick that allows them to survive?
Or maybe it's their drone, or maybe it's a droid, a robot, who knows?
Exactly.
Interesting. Excellent.
Thank
so
you.
much fun to talk with you, Dr. O.
Yes.
Josh?
Well, thanks very much, Jessica and Dr. O. Let's see what our followers on Twitter have to say at this point. Hoove says, the public deserves to know the truth. UFOs Declassified Live. I agree. That's what we're doing here, talking about this report. And important to note, there is actually a classified version of this report. And I agree with you. The public does deserve to know what's in it. Jenner2112 writes, the fact that so many UFOs are witnessed around military, maybe they're trying to get them to stop doing something. Interesting idea that maybe they're not here to hurt us, they're here to protect us, kind of a day the earth stood still point of view. And then Random Bits says, UFOs Declassified Live, Josh is wearing a suit. Is he the alien? That's right. You found me out, it's me. Listen, I wish I could wear this suit all the time, but you try crawling through an Egyptian tomb wearing this. It's not pretty. Anyway, be sure to rocket your tweets our way using the hashtag UFOs Declassified Live. Coming up, we have got more authenticated UAP video, and I will be speaking, this is a big one, with the head of NASA, Bill Nelson. Then we'll look at the discovery that may answer the question, is there life outside our solar system? When UFOs Declassified Live continues. Welcome back to UFOs Declassified Live. I'm Josh Gates. I just found out we are the #3 trending topic on Twitter. Please keep those tweets coming. If we get to #1, they're going to let me keep this suit. Before the break, we were discussing the mind-altering go-fast UFO footage taken aboard a Navy jet fighter from the USS Theodore Roosevelt off the Florida coast in 2015. Now, this next UAP was caught on camera in the same year from near the same location. Check out the motion of this craft. This is the gimbal UFO.
Dude, there's a drone, bro. There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Look at that thing, dude. That's not our LNS though, is it? It's not. That is the LNS, dude. Well, if there's like... Look at that thing. It's rotating.
Well, joining Jeremy, George, and Bob on the panel is our resident astrophysicist, Dr. O. Good to see you.
Thank you, sir.
Bringing some science to the desk.
That's right.
Okay, let's talk about this. What's your first thought upon seeing this gimbal video?
Well, I'm trained as a physicist. So when I see any data, my first thought is, I don't believe it. Right? I don't take it at face value. We have to take the data and validate it and then make scientific measurements that are actually rigorous. So I don't have this data in my possession, and so I can't really say anything about it because I haven't taken it through that process.
Do you think we can explain, just looking at it, how this craft moves and rotates?
You know, it's difficult to do, to disentangle, because you have many moving things at one time. You have the moving object, you have the moving plane, or whatever platform is taking the data. And quite often, if you're locking on, that means that you have something that's moving separate from the actual vehicle that it's mounted on. So you have to disentangle all of this stuff, and it's complicated. But if you take it at face value, as I said before, you see some interesting aerodynamics.
Absolutely. Now, Jeremy, on the clip, we hear a voice say, quote, there's a whole fleet of them. Now, is that just eyewitness saying that? Do we have any data to back that up?
Yeah, absolutely. But a lot of it's going to be classified and it's not going to come out. But I can tell you with 100% certainty, and some people have been exposed to it. There was a fleet in front of this. And by the way, this object, listen to the pilots. They're some of our best sensors. It's moving against the wind. It's rotating. You can hear what they say, but there were other objects that were with the gimbal. And the gimbal has unique propulsion as it goes forward, changes, and starts to reverse direction at the end.
Bob, any chance what we're looking at here could be faked, do you think?
Absolutely, there's a chance. I think it's a small chance. This comes from credible sources, credible sensors. So the video itself, I think, authentic, absolutely. Now, what it means is a different question. I like to say, I've seen the rabbit come out of the hat many times. And is the rabbit in the hat? It depends where you're sitting in the audience to know whether the rabbit's in the hat or not.
George, how important was this gimbal footage to the Pentagon report?
Oh, it was hugely important. I mean, you know, like Dr. O said, we don't have a lot of the data. We don't have the object itself to examine. There is signals data and sensor data that, as Jeremy said, we're probably never going to get to see. But what we don't see in that is wings or rotors or any kind of known propulsion system. We don't see any chemical kind of a trail coming out of the back of it. How does that thing stay up? How does it fly?
Well, I think for me, just the enthusiasm that you hear in the pilots' voices. I mean, they are just agog looking at this thing. To me, that is really compelling here as well. You've just got, these guys are freaking out.
This is something that they had not seen before. They were started to see UFOs on a daily basis on the East Coast. Cubes with spheres around them. Things are completely non-aerodynamic. This is one representation of many sightings and encounters.
All right, so speaking of pilots, like we hear in this video, let's check in with Jessica and our resident fighter pilot, Tracy LaTourette, for a closer look at the gimbal UFO. Jessica?
Thank you, Josh. Tracy, on the gimbal footage, there is so much going on with the numbers and the initials that it's hard to know what to actually focus on. So what are the most important elements of this video?
Well, we could talk all day on what we're looking at here. But if you look at the image itself, the fact that we're able to actually lock onto something tells me that it's not just a light phenomenon or something. So obviously there is something very interesting there, and obviously it's hot because we're in black hot mode. If you look at the aspect of the object, it could suggest a tail aspect of an aircraft, although that's debatable as well because it might be shaped a little bit differently looking at the back.
Okay, so as if it was traveling away from us. Understood.
Right, and then finally, you hear them talking about the fact that it appears to actually rotate. That suggests not only awareness, but gives some indication of potential intent because it looks like it's just observing and luckily not showing us any kind of hostile intent. So that's a good thing.
That's scary.
Well, you always have to think about that. Is this thing trying to kill me?
Yeah, well,
or
yeah.
not?
Yeah, okay, awesome. No, that was a good talk. Awesome, Tracy. Back to you, Josh.
All right, well, thank you, Jessica and Tracy. When we come back, I will be speaking with former astronaut, senator, and NASA administrator Bill Nelson. We'll also learn what Oumuamua means. I'm just proud I could pronounce it. And later, we've got rare UAP footage from the deck of the USS Omaha that may help our panel of experts reach their verdict. Adversary, alien, or neither? During the break, be sure to hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag UFO'S Declassified Live. We are continuing to pore over the Pentagon report on unidentified aerial phenomena. As the report indicates, there is not one blanket explanation for all of them. And that's why you are watching UFO'S Declassified live. I'm Josh Gates. At this time, we are honored to be joined by the current head of NASA. He has flown in space and previously served Florida in the Senate. Bill Nelson, good to see you, sir.
Hey, it's great to see you, and I'm always ready to talk about space.
Well, that's good. I'm glad. We have a lot to talk about with the release of this report. Obviously, you've read it. What do you think is the most eye-opening aspect of this?
Well, I was briefed on this a couple of years ago in the Senate Armed Services Committee, and I had a chance to talk to the Navy pilots You've seen the video now a number of times on TV. They know that they saw something, they tracked it, they chased it, and then all of a sudden it would move from one location to another in a split second. Now we know from the unclassified report that there have been over 140 of these sightings around the globe. And so from the pilot's standpoint, they know they saw something real.
Right.
Now we need to find out what it is. So that's why I've asked the NASA scientists, look at it from a scientific point of view, and let's see if you come up with any answers.
And I think that's a good point. There's an enormous amount of credibility here in terms of these pilots, in terms of the people that witnessed whatever these objects were. If we take the report at face value, what do you think it says about national security?
Well, we don't know. We don't know if it's something out of this world or if it is a person that could, an entity that could be a potential adversary here on Earth.
Right.
Now, our government is saying this is not any technology that we are testing. Therefore, we ought to be concerned. That's why we need to get to the bottom of this.
Right. Now, a lot of people are speculating that these UAPs could be extraterrestrial. You yourself have flown into space. You were a payload specialist during the shuttle program. Do you personally believe that there is extraterrestrial life out there?
Well, let's separate the question. Do I believe that these objects are ETs? The answer is I don't know. That's why we're asking the questions.
Right.
Your second question is, do I think that there's life out there in the universe? This is a universe that is 13.5 billion years old. It is so vast, we cannot even imagine. Our minds cannot grasp the size of it. Do I think that there's another solar system in another galaxy with another sun, with planets revolving around it that might have a planet with a habitable atmosphere? Of course I do.
Do you think that this particular report, which was generated by the Pentagon, do you think that it should be shifted to NASA? Should NASA have a permanent responsibility to, you think, look into these sightings and to continue pursuing this question?
No, the Pentagon needs to continue its defense function. NASA needs to continue its scientific function, and that's exactly what we're doing.
Terrific. Well, I can't wait to see what the Webb telescope and what NASA has in store next. Thank you so much for your time with us today. I really appreciate it, sir.
Have a great day.
All the best. Well, so far tonight, we have focused on unidentified aerial phenomena. Right now, though, we're going to shift our gaze to an identified interstellar object that may be an indicator of life in other solar systems. This startling discovery was spotted by Canadian astronomer Robert Warwick from the Haleakala Observatory on Maui. And since the object is the first of its type, it was named after the Hawaiian word for scout. This is Oumuamua.
Astronomers have actually been predicting that interstellar objects would come into our solar system. We've kind of been waiting to see something like this.
The year was 2017. I was reviewing detections from the Pan-STARRS telescope, and I found what is now known as Oumuamua. This comet is very different than other comets that we see in our own solar system.
We really expected, if we were to see an interstellar object, that it would look like a comet. Oumuamua is at least 5, maybe even 10 times longer than it is wide.
After Oumuamua was no longer visible from ground-based telescopes, we got very accurate positional information from Hubble, and that allowed us to discover this non-gravitational deviation.
Oumuamua came in at this crazy angle, and it was moving so fast, 55 miles per second.
Oumuamua is some kind of comet or asteroid. No one can tell for sure what Oumuamua was.
This could be a probe, a civilization with millions and millions of years head start on us, could have built hundreds of these probes and just let them loose throughout the galaxy. And every now and then one would drift through a solar system, and if they spotted an active transmitting civilization, then the ship activates. Something wakes up. Maybe a message is beamed back to the aliens' homeworld, and it says, we've discovered another emerging civilization. Once that message is received, then they're going to come in force. Hopefully in peace, but maybe not.
There are plans to launch a mission into space, have it just in a stable orbit, just waiting for the next interstellar object. And once they spot it, they'll just be ready to get there.
Oumuamua, it's a little disconcerting that it got as close as it did without anyone seeing it coming. What if we were facing hostile extraterrestrials? Or what if this had just been a rock, but headed directly for planet Earth? I mean, Oumuamua should be a wake-up call. We missed the last one. Let's not miss the next one.
All right, guys, I'm here with Dr. O. So, Dr. O, in your opinion, why is Oumuamua such an important discovery?
Well, there are certain things that we figure out in science, but we can't accept as true until we actually observe it. For example, we figured out early in the 20th century that planet formation is a side effect of star formation, but it wasn't until the 90s that we first saw a planet outside of our solar system, such that we can say, yes, there they are. So we have a good understanding now of how solar systems form, and what happens is it's a very chaotic situation. So where we have 4 terrestrial planets today, there were dozens of protoplanets. And as they interacted and collided, some objects were thrown into the sun, some objects were incorporated into planetary bodies, and some were sent flying out of our solar system.
How? Like, how do they get, how are they circling around and then all of a sudden one decides to just take off?
Yeah, so it has to do with gravitational interaction. So close calls will change a trajectory, and if it swings around the sun or say Jupiter, right, and under the right circumstances, it can gain enough momentum to just slingshot right out of the solar system. So we expect that objects from our solar system are flying throughout the galaxy, and objects from other solar systems are also flying throughout the galaxy, and on occasion, they may enter our solar system, and that's what Oumuamua represents.
Okay, so and then Oumuamua was actually discovered using the telescope that's shown behind us.
That's right. So we found Oumuamua with the telescope on Haleakala in the Hawaiian Islands.
Very well done.
Yes, I've been there. It's a cool spot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so the thing about an object like this is similar to an asteroid. So when we look at interstellar or interplanetary interlopers, they come in 2 main types. Stuff that was once a part of a planetary body, so it'll be made up of metal or stone or rocky, and stuff that never was. So that's like comets, or we call carbonaceous chondrite asteroids. And so Oumuamua appeared to be a rocky body. Most of the astronomers thought that perhaps it would be an icy body, but there was no evidence of that. But you see it has a shape here. It's long and thin. So what we do when we observe these things, now remember, the way physics works, if this object comes into our solar system from a long distance, it's like it fell toward the sun from an interstellar distance.
Yeah.
So it's moving so fast that you can only get so much data. And one of the important pieces of data we call a light curve. Let's just look at its brightness over time. So if you imagine a bowling ball, a bowling pin, flying through space and tumbling, right? When you're seeing the long side, it looks bright. When you're seeing the short end, it looks dim. So you can reconstruct the shape of objects based on how they reflect light. And also, based on the colors that they reflect, you can figure out what it's made of to some degree.
You're just so smart. Oh my gosh. Okay. What other discoveries point to the possibility of life on other planets?
Well, so here is the big controversial analysis that was done. So as different astronomers tried to figure out what is this made of, an astronomer from Harvard and his collaborators performed a study where they claimed that it was way thinner than what most of us read from the data. And so the conclusion was, oh, it looks something like a sail. Now, what would that be? And so this astronomer just speculated that perhaps it is a light sail from some alien civilization. Now, most astronomers do not accept that interpretation.
I mean, that is a leap.
That is a leap.
That is a leap.
It's a giant leap.
Okay,
Yes, yes.
But continuing with what your comment was, so most don't accept necessarily that.
That's right. So, you know, there's some phrase that, like, you know, great claims require great evidence or something like that. The evidence just isn't there. Oumuamua remains a mystery.
Interesting. Okay, so what is it about Oumuamua's trajectory that made people raise their eyebrows?
Oh, that is everything. So if you look, for example, at the planets, they're in these nice elliptical orbits that are almost circular. But Oumuamua did something different. It traced out a geometric figure that we call a hyperbola. And that is like an unbound orbit. And that told us that it is not from our solar system necessarily, right? But the other thing that was really interesting is the laws of physics work really, really well. So we can predict the trajectories, right? And so if it was a rock, this is the expected trajectory, but it did something different.
Yeah.
Now that's not unusual.
It shocked you guys. Yeah.
It shocked us, right? It's not as weird as it may sound, because two things will change the motion of an object. One is sunlight actually applies a pressure, and there's what's called the solar wind. So that could change the trajectory. And also, when objects get near the sun, if they have any ices, those ices will do what we call outgassing, and that creates a force on the body and changes its trajectory from a purely ballistic trajectory.
Awesome. All right. Well, speaking of outgassing, back to you, Josh.
Oh, unbelievable. Jess, I could have you back in the jungles tomorrow.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
When we come back, our panel of experts rate their top UAP sightings. Which footage checks all of the boxes for them? And later, we'll hear from some Hollywood heavy hitters about whether they believe in extraterrestrials when UFO's Declassified Live returns. Welcome back to UFO's Declassified Live. I'm Josh Gates, and I'm thrilled to be joined by our panel of experts, Jeremy Corbell, George Knapp, and Nick Pope. And we are all here because of this. We are discussing the Pentagon report that just dropped 5 days ago. And one of the really interesting takeaways for me in this report are these different buckets that they use to categorize the UAPs or UFOs. So those categories are airborne clutter, natural atmospheric phenomena, stuff that's just naturally occurring, USG or U.S. government, foreign adversary systems, and other. So let's talk about other or natural occurrences. Jeremy, have you ever looked at a video or seen a UAP and then later realized you'd misidentified something?
Well, all the time people misidentify things, and the whole point is something is unidentified until it's identified. Don't jump to conclusions.
Right. George, where do you think that your pyramid UFO video would fall in these buckets?
They would fall into the place where I get my mail, into other. That's where I live. I mean, do they look aerodynamic to you? If you're going to build something, some kind of a drone, an earthly drone, would you make it pyramid shaped? I wouldn't.
Exactly. Now, Nick, looking at these different categories, which is more, concerning, foreign adversary systems or other?
Other. It's a little word, but it's a scary word in this context. You can pick up the phone and talk to your adversaries through diplomacy. We can't talk to these people if who or whatever they are. We don't know.
Personally, I would go with airborne clutter, but I'm afraid of birds. Okay, listen. Based on these incredible videos that we saw tonight, let's talk about your top UAP sightings and why. Let's just go rapid fire down the line here. What about for you, Jeremy?
I mean, my favorite is 1989, Bob Lazar right here in Las Vegas, Nevada. But after what we've seen tonight, it's the cases that I've worked on. So the USS Omaha and all the corroborative sensor data and information and visual evidence that George and I have been able to provide to the public makes it one of the most robust cases we've ever had with UFOs.
Right, because it's not just one piece of footage.
Right.
You've got night vision, you've got radar, you've got FLIR. It's kind of the whole package.
And you have now footage from the deck of the Omaha.
Exactly. Okay, so George, what about you?
For me, it's the Tic Tac. I think it's the most important UFO in history because of what it has meant to where we are now. I mean, the credibility of those witnesses, the pilots, Dave Fravor and others, they've gone before Congress with the help of 2 former intelligence officials, Lou Elizondo and Chris Mellon, who gave up government service to push this ball down the field. That video is what sold that story. It got the New York Times to cover it, 60 Minutes to cover it, and it was the reason that we have a UAP task force.
Certainly changed the game, absolutely. And Nick Pope, what about you?
I'm going for gimbal. When these normally unflappable pilots get excited, I get excited too. But look, there are a lot of UFO videos on the internet, but what makes these really stand out, and gimbal is part of this, is that the Department of Defense have put it on their own website and issued a press release to say it's genuine. So we've got the provenance of it.
I'm with you. The gimbal video for me is really the most intriguing just because of how these unflappable pilots, you know, these guys that normally have this kind of right stuff attitude, they are just freaking out, for lack of a better term, about what they're encountering up there. There's something about that just makes it so compelling. All right, so let's check in with Jessica and our ever-expanding Twitter feed.
Thank you, Josh. Here's what's happening over on social. Let's bring it up. All right, Joseph writes, do you think the general public is ready for complete UFO disclosure? Jeremy, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I think we can handle it. We know we can handle it. We have a right to know, a need to know, and I feel a duty to find out the truth about UFOs.
All right, thanks, Jeremy, and thanks, Joseph. Keep sending your clips and comments in using the hashtag UFOs Declassified Live.
All right, well, next up, we're going to dig deep into our controversial history with UFOs. Plus, we have that gripping footage from the deck of the USS Omaha when UFOs Declassified Live returns. You're watching UFOs Declassified Live. I'm Josh Gates. As the Pentagon report indicates, the public in general has been hesitant to disclose UAP sightings because of the stigma associated with UFO eyewitnesses. But research shows that these UAP sightings have been going on for years and years. Take a look.
People think that with these US Navy sightings, some people think this is new. It's not new. It's been going on since the dawn of time. Myths, legends, these things, whatever they are, have been seen throughout history.
After World War II, the world was very different. And we had exploded the nuclear bomb over Nagasaki and Hiroshima. That changed everything. Now, people start seeing unidentified flying objects, and they're coming over military bases, and we don't know what to do about it.
One of the central pieces to the UFO backstory is Roswell. Something crashed in the New Mexico desert. From that moment on, 2 things happened. Firstly, the US government knew that we're not alone. And secondly, a vast conspiracy emerged to cover this truth up. Believers say alien spacecraft, skeptics say weather balloon. Whatever happened at Roswell, it's now so embedded in people's awareness. It's part of pop culture and continues to fire people's interest and imagination. And maybe what happened at Roswell was the start of all this, at least the start in the modern era.
In 1953, the CIA created the Robertson Panel. It said that there was no direct threat from UFOs. But most importantly, they said the real danger wasn't from UFOs, but it was from thousands of UFO sightings would overwhelm our reporting capabilities and mask a Soviet air attack. And as a result, they made a concerted effort to debunk and demystify UFOs and any people associated with it.
If people watch closely, they'll notice we tend to use the phrase UAP and not UFO. It's just a way of getting rid of the stigma that comes with the term UFO. And it's just a way, and this is really important, to get the senior stakeholder engagement from within government, the military, and the intelligence community.
Well, joining Nick Pope on our panel are former CIA officer Jim Semivan and intelligence historian Keith Melton. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so, you know, when we talk about the history of UFO sightings, they may well go back into prehistory. But I think most Americans think of Roswell as the beginning of it all. Why?
Well, actually, the first major UFO incident took place 1 month earlier.
Before Roswell?
Before. When a private pilot flying near Mount Rainier, Washington, observed 9 flying discs in formation traveling at speeds between Mach 2 and Mach 3. The next day it made nationwide headlines, and one newspaper coined the term flying saucers.
That's where it all started.
It started there.
At least in our popular culture. Why do you think then that Roswell kind of gets all the glory, as it were?
It has become popularized certainly after 1970.
Yeah.
But from 1947 to 1970, very little was written about it.
And let's talk about Area 51 and how that fits into the Roswell story.
There is no direct connection between Roswell in 1947 and Area 51 in 1955. It didn't even begin construction until August of 1955.
And yet they're always sort of thought of in the same breath.
In the context that if there were technology, foreign adversarial technology, that would likely have been the place. But actually, at the time, it would have probably gone to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base.
Sure.
Would have been a much more likely scenario in that theory.
One of the things, Jim, that I found really interesting in the package is you mention that the bombings in World War II of Hiroshima and Nagasaki really coincide with the beginnings of a lot of these UFO reports. Do you think there is an actual connection between these events?
Yeah, I think so. In 1945, a squadron of Hellcat fighters were trying to intercept a UFO that was hovering over the Hanford plutonium production facility in Washington State. Now, they did this over 3 nights. They went after these UFOs over 3 nights, and they obviously did catch them. But this occurred 7 months before the bombs went off, the atomic bombs went off in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And what this indicates to me is that these UAPs were interested in our nuclear technology at the very beginning of the nuclear age.
One of the things I read that sounded either outlandish or terrifying or both, I don't know, is that some former Air Force personnel testified not just that UAPs exist, but that they have the capability to neutralize nuclear weapons. Is there any evidence of that really?
Yes, and allegedly, but there was a few instances where UAPs were seen over ICBM sites, and that they were allegedly interfering with their launch activity. Now, this happened in Russia, too. It happened numerous times in Russia, actually. So we have seen this before.
Nick, one of the things that I think is really curious here is we have talked in this country about UFOs, certainly in popular culture, for a really long time. But look at what we have now. I mean, we've got this official Pentagon report. Do you think that the release of this report changes the perception in the public and the culture around UFOs?
Completely. I think this issue was regarded as fringe. It's now mainstream. People thought about it in terms of science fiction and conspiracy theory. They're now framing it correctly as defense and national security issues. So it's completely changed the narrative, yes.
Do you think that when people read in this report that 143 out of 144 of these sightings are unexplained, that they should be worried?
Yeah, I think it's like, if you can't explain that many of them, well, go back and take another look. Could do better.
Yeah, so you think people should be nervous by this to some extent?
They should. If there's anything in our skies, particularly with these technologies, then absolutely we must be concerned. And Congress is concerned, hence the interest, continuing interest. This report is just the beginning.
All right, well, thank you very much. We're going to take a break here. When we return, we have got that must-see footage from the deck of the USS Omaha, and it is almost time to bang the gavel and find out what the verdict is from our experts. Adversary, alien, neither. And don't forget to share your thoughts on UAPs on Twitter using the hashtag UFO'S Declassified Live. We'll be right back. looking at our poll when asked what's inside Area 51, looks like a pretty tight race between an ET spaceship and military equipment. Welcome back to UFO's Declassified Live. I'm Josh Gates, along with UAP/UFO experts Jeremy Corbell, Jim Semovin, and Nick Pope. Now, as promised, we have brand new footage from the swarming event above the USS Omaha. Get ready for this. We've already seen incredible radar and FLIR imagery. Now we have a brand new angle on this same historic event. Take a look. All right, Jeremy, let's talk about this. What are we seeing in this footage?
Right, so you're seeing corroborative video evidence. All the other videos that George Knapp and I have put out, they've been confirmed by the Pentagon as being true unidentified UFOs, part of a study. What you're seeing here is video footage from the USS Omaha. You see the lights, they're lit up, and that's really important. It's the first time you're seeing footage of this.
And so how long did this event go on for?
This was actually over a number of days where it came to a highlight on the 15th of July, 2019.
So we see these lights, we can see some blinking here. I mean, I know we have this FLIR and this radar also, but how do we know this isn't an aircraft? How do we know we're not seeing a helicopter hovering here?
Right, so this is well studied by our United States military. It's part of the UAPTF task force, investigation into this. This is a confirmed UFO sighting. They don't know where they landed. They don't know where they took off from. This is a true UFO case with great data.
There were 14 of these things at one point around the USS Omaha, completely surrounded it. They'd pop on and off radar over a period of several hours. That one was recorded on the thermal images that traveled along with the ship for an hour.
Earlier, I asked you what your favorite video from tonight is. Anybody want to change their answer? I mean, how much of a game changer do you think this video is?
Altogether, this video is so important because, again, it supports an entire event series. It was one of the most well-documented UFO cases of all time now.
And so, taking all of that evidence together, it does seem really compelling, doesn't it?
It is absolutely compelling.
So, okay, George, you've been at the forefront of this field for years. What's your reaction to this video?
Well, it's important because you have three different forms of evidence to document it. I presume that there are other cases like that there's sensor information that the Pentagon has that is too sensitive to release to the public. It is classified for a good reason. As it was told to me by an intelligence official, you can't tell your friends without telling your enemies. So there are good reasons for keeping some of this secret, but this clearly is a pretty solid case.
Nick, how seriously should this incident be taken?
Very seriously. Something is almost toying with us. It's like playing cat and mouse with us. And I know some of us with government backgrounds get accused of pushing the threat narrative here. But come on, you've got to say, when these sorts of things get close to our US military assets, whether they're aircraft carriers, destroyers, Navy jets, whatever they are, that has got to be seen as a potential threat.
Okay, we're going to take a break here, but you're not going to want to miss what's coming up. Our panelists will be delivering their final verdict: adversary, extraterrestrial, or neither. And please keep launching your tweets our way with the hashtag UFOs Declassified Live. More to come after this. We are back with more UFOs Declassified Live. I'm Josh Gates. Well, for most of us, our only exposure to the idea of extraterrestrial life has come from television and movies, from The Twilight Zone to Independence Day. So how does Hollywood compare to the real deal?
Hollywood has always been a teller of sci-fi stories, I think, for entertaining the audiences about UFOs. And I think UFO movies actually play into our great ignorance of the world around us.
One of the things that's always been out there, did we create interest in UFOs? Or the fact that people were interested in those things, did we take advantage and create what our vision of what those images would look like?
There is an interesting conspiracy theory that some Hollywood movies are actually part of a government campaign to acclimatize people to an extraterrestrial reality.
So Hollywood has had a huge impact in terms of how we conceptualize extraterrestrial life form intermingling with life on Earth.
I have met people that I truly believe could be aliens. When we would scout Men in Black, we would all drive around New York and we would always look out the window and go, alien, alien. It's possible they're here.
Hollywood created the look and the sound of UFOs and flying saucers. But it's really the movies of Hollywood starting in the 1950s that give us the definitive image of those flying saucers. And its impact on our perception of UFOs has been tremendous, probably bigger than any other media.
If used correctly, Hollywood is an incredible platform to enlighten people. I think it will make people want to work on it, study it, understand it, get people really interested and excited about dealing with UFOs that are more than just the craft in the sky.
Hollywood has actually produced much better CGI video than the Navy pilots have. That's cause for some question in itself, is that are we too now saturated with video, CGI images, and has this now made us less likely to believe what we see?
Joining Nick Pope and I on the panel is our own Jessica Chobot. Welcome to the big desk, Jess.
Oh, I'm so stoked to be here.
Good to have you here. Okay, let's talk movies. I know that you are a major pop culture and movie buff, by which I mean a huge nerd.
Yes.
What is the best extraterrestrial alien movie ever made, in your opinion?
Ever made? Well, I've got a lot that I like a lot, but I would have to say They Live.
Oh, They Live.
Yeah.
John Carpenter, yeah.
Yep.
Amazing special effects, questionable acting.
I don't think so.
Come on.
It's a classic.
It is a classic. It is a classic. Nick Pope, what about for you?
Arrival.
Yeah.
Because I think it speaks to a lot of the issues that people are thinking about right now with this report to Congress. I mean, you know, it's not just about aliens, it's about us and our response. Do we respond with hope or fear, with the hand of friendship or with guns and bombs?
That's right. I have to say, it's kind of an impossible question. There are so many great alien movies. How about Alien? Or the greatest sequel of all time, Aliens?
I thought you were going to say Prometheus, and I was going to be like, you gotta leave!
Not Prometheus, but the other ones. I mean, for me personally, when I was a kid, I used to love really old sci-fi. I mean, I used to love, Day the Earth Stood Still. I was Forbidden Planet. I was a huge fan of Twilight Zone, the TV series, the reruns of that when I was a kid. And I have to say, the monsters are due on Maple Street and, Nightmare at 20,000 Feet. Will the real Martian please stand up? Those old, kind of Cold War era stories that were also, again, speaking to people's fears. That was the stuff that really got me into science fiction and into this topic, because there is something about extraterrestrials that's also very human. Does that make sense, Nick?
Yes, it does. We look out, but at the same time we look in. It's not just about aliens, but it's about us. Who are we as a species? How do we respond if we find out that we're not alone?
One of the things that you mentioned in the piece, Nick, is that some people believe that Hollywood is part of a kind of conspiracy to acclimate us to the possibility of an extraterrestrial arrival. I'm not sure I put much stock in that. Do you think that's true?
No, not really. To acclimatize us to that, or even indoctrinate us to say that they are a threat. But look, I think there are so many movies, some with good aliens, some with bad aliens, that it's a funny indoctrination campaign if we're getting all these mixed messages.
Exactly.
Can I jump in really quick, though, and say it's not the first time that Hollywood's worked with the government to pull the wool over people's eyes, so who knows?
I have no idea what you're talking about. It better not be the
Argo.
moon landing. Oh, Argo. Okay.
Yeah,
I thought you were going moon landing. I was getting very worried, Jess, for a second. Don't go crazy on me here.
No, I'm talking about other times that they've just made deals with the U.S. to try and accomplish things, but not that.
Not that. And I take your point, Nick, right? I mean, if this was a Hollywood conspiracy, all movies would be E.T., right? They would all be warm and fuzzy. We wouldn't have species.
Or all the other way, fear sells.
That's right. That's exactly right. We would be terrified. Okay, so we're going to take a break. A pleasure, as always, talking to both of you. Okay, so what television show, movie, pop culture moment do you think is the most accurate depiction of what's really out there? Tell us now using the hashtag UFOs Declassified Live on Twitter. And after the break, I'll be speaking with the man who is largely responsible for initiating the Pentagon report. Former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid will be joining us, and you won't believe what he has to say. And our panel will reach their verdict when UFOs Declassified Live returns. Welcome back to UFOs Declassified Live. I'm Josh Gates. As you know by now, information on UAPs became declassified this week when the Pentagon UFO report became public. Right now, we're going to speak to the man who many call the godfather of this report, former Senator and Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid. Thank you for joining us, Senator.
Really my pleasure.
Look, I think a lot of Americans were pretty surprised to wake up a few days ago to see that the Pentagon had put out an official report on UFOs. When you got the ball rolling on this in 2007, did you think it would lead to a public report like this?
I didn't give it much thought. Frankly, I was just trying to show that the occurrences of these UFOs was not something that was a figment of someone's imagination, but they actually took place. And as we know now, we spent $22 million of the government's money, and we proved that these are actual sightings that people have had for a long, long time. So I didn't know if they'd come out with a report. The report that, frankly, that they came out with is pretty sparse, pretty slim. And I would hope that this is not the one and done. And I think that if we're going to do a good job on this, we need to make sure the government's involved in it on a continuing basis. And this slim report is not good enough.
What do you think that Americans should take away from this report, or what do you find most interesting in it?
Well, I'm glad the government is acknowledging that there's something that needs to be looked into. My concern is it was just so weak in facts. If anybody reads this, they won't know much more after reading it than before they started.
And look, the report doesn't specifically point to an extraterrestrial origin for these sightings. Do you think it exonerates foreign players, though? China or Russia? Could these be, high-tech objects from other countries?
I don't think we can eliminate anything.
Right.
I think we should have an open mind. My personal feeling is I doubt that it is China or Russia or France. But if it is, that's the way it is. I just think that technologically, they're not that far ahead of us. In fact, I don't think they're ahead of us at all.
And so where do you think we go from here, Senator?
I believe that we must continue working on this. We have, we do know they exist. We don't know what they are. But for us now to walk away from it with this very slim report, it would not be in keeping with what I believe is good scientific evidence. We need to continue not worried about conspiracy theories, little green men. We have to worry about science. What are they? We know they exist. So let's continue working scientifically to find out what the hell they are.
Absolutely. Senator, a pleasure speaking with you. Thanks very much for your time.
My pleasure.
Well, great to get Senator Reid's input. And if nothing else, the Pentagon report has formalized a number of goals for future UAP research. The Pentagon says they plan to standardize the reporting, consolidate the data, and deepen the analysis. They also intend to expand their collection of data and increase the investment in research and development. Okay, so Jim, let me start with you. Do you think that's true? Do you think that Congress will continue funding UAP research like the report says?
Oh, yes. I think the cat's out of the bag. And as long as UAPs are buzzing nuclear sites, military installations, and carrier strike groups, you're going to have money for research.
So you think this is just the beginning of this,
I think this is just the beginning, yes.
Okay, so time has come. Moment of truth, everybody here on the panel. One of you is an alien. No, that's not what we're talking about. Given what we've learned tonight, experts, I can't wait to hear your take on all of this. Do you believe that these UAPs are extraterrestrials? Do you believe that they're adversaries, foreign players of some kind, or something else entirely? We'll start with my good friend Nick Pope. What do you think, man?
I'd love it to be aliens, but I occasionally wonder if it isn't something more bizarre, something for which we have neither the words nor the concept.
So, you think it could be something else entirely then?
Absolutely.
All right, Jim, what about you?
I believe it's a non-human technology.
Really?
And I wish I knew who owns it.
Wow, that's incredible to hear from you. You know, our intelligence clandestine guy here. I mean, that's kind of remarkable, shocking for me to hear. But that's what you believe, that
Yes.
that it's something other.
It's something other, no question.
And you, my good man, what do you think, George?
Well, given that technology, that advanced technology that is still far beyond what we can do, has been around at least 74 years, I believe that it is non-human, that it's a non-human source. That could mean extraterrestrial, it could mean interdimensional, it could be something more exotic, ultra-terrestrial, something, as Nick said, that we don't really know how to explain, but something that's lived here for a long time. We need to investigate the unexplained, not explain the uninvestigated, and that's going to take a permanent program.
All right, and we're going to need another special to talk about ultra-terrestrials. I'm
around.
Okay, good. And that brings me to you, Jeremy. What do you think about all this? What's your final analysis here?
Some UFOs represent a technology that outperform, outmaneuver, and outpace our greatest warplanes and weaponry. Some UFOs are not made by modern humans, and the United States government has in their possession some of these craft.
You believe that for sure?
I am certain of it.
Okay, let's go over to the big wall. Jessica Chobot, what do you make of all this?
Well, I'm not a scientist, so I have no problem just going into the deep end of the pool, full aliens.
I know it. Jess, you're a believer. You are a true believer.
Let's just do this. Let's do this, people.
All right, and so standing next to the true believer, the voice of science, Dr. O, what do you think? Are you gonna bring us down to earth here?
Well, I think it's all in the name. Whether you call it a UAP or a UFO, it starts with U, which stands for unknown. And that's where I stand. And so I think we need more data.
Do you think there is a possibility that there is an extraterrestrial explanation for this?
I don't lean that direction for this phenomenon, but there are astrophysicists who think that there may be life on our planet that we don't even recognize as life because we don't have a broad enough definition. And so I do think that the evidence tells us that life is ubiquitous throughout our universe, but I think that intelligent, technologically advanced life is exceedingly rare.
All right, so one of the things that we have to talk about in this report is what's not in it. Right? There is a classified version of this report. I'm looking at the clandestine guy here when I say this. Do you think we're going to see more of this? Do you think there's going to be additional material declassified here?
Oh, there's certainly going to be more material. George and I are going to make sure of that.
Whether it's released officially or not, we don't know, but it's
coming.
And do you think that what wasn't included in this public report is, for lack of a better word, juicy? Nick?
Oh, I'm sure. I think there'll be a lot of technical information. We haven't heard much, for example, about the satellite imagery that former DNI John Ratcliffe mentioned. So that's something to look for.
But for sure, this is the beginning of a journey here, this report. This is not the end of this conversation.
You've done been told UFOs are real and they require study. That's what that report says.
All right. So much more to come.
Yes, I agree. Yeah.
All right. Well, I have to thank all of you. What an absolutely amazing journey tonight. What a panel. You know, to some, this report represents an awakening, right? The government finally addressing these UAPs that have been around for years. And this represents a commitment to more research and investigation, a new day. To others, the report is a good first step, let's call it, but that more transparency is needed to understand the truth. And I'm sure that others still will remain firmly skeptical. I know we've got some skeptics watching tonight who are probably unmoved by these 143 unexplained events. As for me personally, I just wish we had more time because I have a lot more questions. I want to thank Jessica Chobot and all of our esteemed guests this evening for what has been an amazing conversation. For UFO's Declassified Live, I'm Josh Gates. Good night from Las Vegas.